Are graded cards ruining the hobby for collectors?
I don't think that it ruined it. Right during that COVID bubble, we saw, I can't even remember the names of some of these other companies, but we saw PSA and Beckett both just pause, right? They had to catch up. They were way too
Yeah,
backlogged.
yeah. Yeah,
So
but
I
you had
think,
HGA that was out there.
right. So I think when that happened, number one, you've got people getting cards graded from every which company. They're just sending it, whatever. And then on top of that, it's great that PSA caught up, but then you saw an influx of PSA and Beckett cards coming in. So was that because of COVID? Probably. You would think that had to have something to do with it, right? Like, because people are bored, more people were in the hobby, so more people are sending submissions. They weren't prepared. But I don't think in the long term it's going to ruin it. I think that if anything, maybe it's normalized it. I think now people kind of expect to see it. Like a lot of times when you tell somebody you have this card, most people are going to just assume it's raw, but I think a higher percentage of people will assume it's graded. What's the first question that a lot of these guys are going to ask you nowadays? Going to be, oh, what grade does it have? Oh, didn't get it graded. Oh, you didn't get it graded. So I think that if anything, it kind of normalized the standard of getting cards graded. I don't think it killed it. I just think that maybe there might have been a period where, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, again, supply and demand. What's going to hurt the hobby is, especially 2021 was the worst, bro. So with 2021 products, they printed the amount of cards to feed 2020's demand, right? Which is normal business practice. But they didn't account for the fact that half of those people that were in from 2020 were going to be out of the hobby. They were only in it for COVID. They were only in it because the values were insane. They saw an opportunity to make some quick money. So while there are more people in the hobby now than there was before COVID, there's definitely not as many people in the hobby that were in right in the midst of COVID. So then you take products and you set the prices for that 2020 demand, but you don't have that same demand in 2021. And what you ended up with is you actually overprinted 2021's cards. And we saw it the worst, bro. We had a real hard time getting rid of it. You started seeing blaster boxes and megas on the shelves, which you hadn't seen in a long time. And I don't necessarily think it's that people didn't want the stuff. I think that there was just so much of it. It was so easy to get your hands on. It was so easy to pull a T-Law Silver. It was so easy to pull those cards that I think that's kind of what killed it. So I don't necessarily think that the grading had any negative impact on it. I think if anything, I think grading is good for the hobby. I think grading overall is good just to know, especially nowadays with all the fakes, bro. You got artificial intelligence stuff, there's AI crap. You never know what these guys can do. You got
Yeah,
people that can print counterfeit money. You don't think they can make a counterfeit card? Easy. So even though it's not a perfect science, I think it's good for the hobby. The cards should be graded, especially the valuable cards. They should be graded, if anything, just to prove they're real.
I 100% agree on that. As far as the grading aspect, you know, a lot of people come up with fakes, you know, and having like PSA or Beckett, to determine that, it's just I feel like that's better for the hobby, get those people out of here making that fake crap.
yeah. Like you said with Beckett, not a lot of people are grading Beckett anymore because you're getting the same exact results from PSA and you're getting the same exact results from SGC. And with SGC, you're getting a fast turnaround. In PSA, it's always going to be your PSA 10. That's your king in the hobby. As for graded cards ruining the hobby, I could say yes and I could say no. I could say yes because there is an oversaturated amount on the market of just bullshit base cards, patch cards, whatever. Because I know a decent amount of people that they were just grading to grade. And even with these grading submissions like PSA has with the PSA collectors and all that, you need a certain amount of cards to grade it. So, PSA say, I know what they usually offer like what, 2022. I know sometimes it's like if you do like a group of 30, it's like 15 per card or whatever it is. So like, sometimes it's hard to get 30 cards of value that you're going to want to grade on your own. So that's where you're going to see some of this like random, like, you're going to get like a random Jalen Hurts mosaic base that's like a PSA 9. And like, and you're scrolling through eBay, you're going to see like so many slabs that are selling for less than the actual grading price because these cards aren't worth shit anyway when they're raw, and then when they get a bad grade, it's just, at this point they're just encapsulated up. But for the collectors, at the same time, those cards that are oversaturated in the market, like, so say for example, you're a big Eagles fan and you want a bunch of Jalen Hurts cards, and you want a sick Jalen Hurts card, and you're looking at this card raw, and you're like, damn, that's a cool ass card. I really like it a lot. But then you go and you see a PSA 7, and then it's going less further than the raw. You just want the card in your hobby, and you like how it looks. You just want the card in your collection, and you just like how it looks. So it's good and bad for the hobby at the same time. For people that really don't care about grades and they want something just sick in their collection, the lower grade's fine. If you're looking for ROI or whatever, the higher grades are obviously better. Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about the lower grades, just for collecting purposes?
Well, not for nothing, but you mentioned people that are just collecting and they don't care about the value; they just want the card. I think that makes it a little easier for them to get their hands on the card for cheaper. I mean, if a guy's got a raw card, it should be worth more theoretically than a PSA 7. A PSA 7, it's a 7. A raw card, unless there's something obvious, there's always that shot that it's an 8, 9, 10. You know what I mean? So if you're just a collector, somebody's got one raw, somebody else has a PSA 7, and you don't really care, you just want it in your collection. You have a strong argument with the PSA 7 to really beat the guy up and get a low price. Which really isn't a low price because that's really what it's worth. Unfortunately, the grading we all know is it could backfire. If you come back with a shit grade, you just crush the value of your card. So there's always that, and it also leaves things like some people don't grade things because they're lazy. Some people don't grade things because they don't want to. It's just easier to move them raw. But if you don't care, then might as well take the 7 because there's more selling points on your side why this card is not worth what the comps of the raw card is. So, I think it's good. I think it's good for collectors.
Yeah. A lot of people buy 7s and 8s just to crack them and submit them to another, they submit it. So, you have PSA 7, you submit it to SGC, and then it comes back in SGC 9. You're still making more money regardless.
I think something like that is more likely to have a negative impact on the hobby than the actual number of graded cards. It's how many companies there are and how... Listen, competition is always good in any business, right? You see companies do promotions to be competitive, which all in all is great overall. But when you talk about, saturation, when you talk about things like that, if you had a card that, and this is really, I guess it has nothing to do with anything other than you're trusting humans to grade these cards, right? Because you could take a PSA 7, crack it, send it back into PSA, and come back with a 9. It's all about who's grading it that day and their perspective of the card. So I guess that doesn't really matter about the companies. See, my thing is I don't think the grading was bad for the hobby. What was bad for the hobby was Panini getting greedy and overprinting. You know what I mean? To me, that was something that kind of that hurt. The market had to correct regardless. They didn't have anything to do with that. When you have an influx of people coming into anything, it's going to jack the prices up, and the market's going to correct once everything settles down. The problem is they acted on those inflated numbers. Instead of trying to forecast the correction and trying to match the correction, everybody and their mother knew the hobby was blowing up because of COVID, right? Everybody knew it was okay, it's because of COVID, right? Same thing with, Bitcoin, everything else, whatever you want. When people are home, they're getting paid money from the government. They're going to find something to do with it. They're bored as hell. They can't go anywhere. They're going to find something else to do. And the economy is unstable. So you have investors, genuine investors who are pulling their money out of other things, out of stocks, because they're uncertain with where things are going to go. And they're investing in something that they think is a little more stable. Right. But, and I know I keep going back to it, but because 2021 was a really rough year for us. And that was just, Panini made us overpay for a lot of things, and there wasn't the demand to keep up with it, and we had to do a lot of fighting to get out of that hole. But yeah, overprinting is the worst. And if you want to kill the hobby, just print 1 million cards every year and don't give a damn about the short print counts, and that's how you kill the hobby.